When you think of women empowerment, who do you think of? Is it Maya Angelou? Is it Michelle Obama? Well, what about Danielle Geathers, the first African American female student body president at MIT, a predominantly white institution? See, Danielle created her own narrative and she took an opportunity by storm and is continuing to pave a way for little Black girls. And we're here to tell her story. Let's check it out.
My name is Danielle Geathers. I'm currently working in consulting as a business analyst, but before that, I graduated from MIT, class of 2022. And at MIT, I studied mechanical engineering and was also student body president for 2 years, served as the first Black woman to be in that role. And currently, I serve on the board of trustees called the MIT Corporation there as well.
I want to start like all the way from the beginning. You're a native of Miami. What was that like? Growing up, what was that foundation to get you to where you are now?
Yeah. It's actually interesting. I met someone today and they're like, "Oh, you're here in the New Jersey office? I thought you were in Miami." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm a Miami girl. My family lives in Miami. I'll always have a house in Miami." And all my friends make fun of me because I always go back. Like it's about once a month that I'll be back in Miami. But I do love Miami. And I'm like a sixth generation Miami, and a lot of my family has been in Miami for so long. So I do feel like I have roots there. I grew up in a household where I was an only child with a single mom who was a Black woman lawyer, but she was also very passionate about the Black woman lawyer community and was president of the Black Woman Lawyer Bar Association in Miami, and did some work to increase diversity on the bench. So that was kind of what I was raised in, the environment of like always trying to think about breaking barriers and how you can make areas more inclusive. And I think that definitely had a positive impact on me. I think another component is Miami having amazing weather really helps flourish an athletic environment. So I grew up my whole life playing a bunch of different sports, but I ended up selecting soccer. So it was very intense about soccer growing up and ended up choosing to go to MIT for soccer. And I played my first year. And I think that being an athlete and knowing I wanted to play my sport in college also really affected the way I thought about college admissions at such a younger age than is traditional. And I think it has an impact in like how we as a community, as a Black community who often thinks about sports, can leverage thinking about academic opportunities as well.
And you talk about like doing the stuff that you love. Do you remember that moment that clicked where it was like, okay, engineering, I got to be a student body president. I got to play soccer. I mean, you just talked about soccer, but more so the scholastic side of it. What was that spark for you?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it was never a moment. Like I never thought about being student body president, honestly, more than like a month before I ran. I think it was like, oh, I'm really loving hanging out with my soccer team. Like I really love kicking the ball around with my friends. And then it became, wow, I don't want to stop doing this. Like I guess I want to be a college soccer player. Like it wasn't like I imagined myself in college with the team or with the jersey. It was like I really love this sport. I'm having a lot of fun. I want to continue doing it. And similarly with student government, like wow, there are a lot of areas of improvement. And I feel like I'm making waves in the conversations I'm having. Like, how do I have more conversations like this? How do I figure out how to get a budget to do the initiatives I want to do? And it was kind of all driven in like looking just one step forward, two steps forward, and then like just following those small steps leading me to bigger things that like I had no foresight to be able to be like, oh, that's what I want to do. But looking back, like I guess it was just like a natural, gradual progression into these stages, if that makes sense.
Was there like I know here, like for example, Black Student Union, at MIT, was it like you were looking at things like Black Student Union? Were there people in your life, even going to school, where they were kind of holding your hand, or when there were times where you felt like, man, like, am I really doing this? Even though I'm naturally driven to take on all of these things, I know like as humans, sometimes we get in those fields of defeat, right? Were there people that really push you along outside of your mom?
Yeah, definitely. So it was actually interesting. When I was in high school, I went to a predominantly white high school in Miami. And we kind of had a time when I guess our school decided to focus on athletics. And so their strategy was recruiting athletes for the first time. And it ended up having a very interesting racial dynamic in that it was a private white school who was then bringing on some athletes who were using scholarship for financial aid, athletic scholarships, but like hadn't been in an environment like that. And our school did not invest in the resources necessary to think about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so, because of that, by the time I was in high school playing on a team, we were looking around like we all sit together at the lunch table and we talk about things, but we have no leverage. We're not in any conversations. At around the same time, 2016, I remember the Princeton Black Student Union was on national television for their protests, for their walkouts. And I was like, whoa, people are mobilizing, like this sense feeling that we are a community but we have no formal mechanisms. Like other groups are feeling this too and actually taking steps to codify their processes, to like have a stance and be able to have conversations with the president. So it was like perfect timing for me. And that as a high school student, very like obsessed with like my own little life, like doing like SAT, ACT, trying to just get into the AP class. Like I had like an awakening where I was like, whoa, like there's movement happening and there's power with like joining as a group formally. So that's when I decided to start our Black Student Union at my high school. Our school was very weird about clubs. They had this conspiracy theory that students only wanted to found a club so they could put it on their resume into college. So we had a lot of resistance in creating the club because people thought we were doing it to get into college, which is strange. So we did a petition. So I spent days going around getting people to sign the petition to form the club, and then we were able to create the club and move it forward. So then when I heard that MIT, I did my research to make sure MIT had a Black Student Union. But then when I learned about their like actual like decades long history of making change, I was like, okay, I'm super excited to transition from this organization that I founded and that we were able to do cool things, but it was still like baby, like 2 years old by the time I graduated, to an organization where people are coming from all over the nation, all over the world, Black students who care about STEM who are making change. So I was very excited, went to MIT. There were 5 committees you could join. I think I applied to all of them. I think they were like, okay, 3 of them will take you. You're doing too much. And I was like, okay, I just want to learn. And there were so many like older Black students at MIT who took me under their wing, and were willing to like coach me through different things that I'm so grateful for.
Man, that's awesome. Like, it's always good to have people in your life that it's like when you hit those bumps in the road, like, no, I'm going to push you forward. Even being a Black woman, in engineering, I guess that goes to the next question. I want to hear your story with that. We were talking about that earlier, and there's like still a lack of African American men and women that are in, STEM, mostly in engineering, but also face challenges. So talk about when you started your career in engineering, what did that look like at MIT? And did you ever face any type of challenges, and how were you able to go get through those?
Yeah. I think there are so many components to it, and that I think that Miami as a place just has a lot less STEM representation than other places. For instance, before I had gone to MIT, I didn't know any parent, anybody really, other than like a teacher who, or like a doctor who was like heavily involved in like lab research or anything STEMmy. Like even when I was applying to MIT, especially coming, my mom was a lawyer, all her friends were lawyers. They were like, oh, STEM, like after 7th grade, my mom's a genius, but she could not help me with math or science. So it's also just a different dynamic because I think it speaks to the lack of inclusion at MIT that you would probably be surprised that I bet like 70% of people's parents are in a STEM field or have a PhD of some sort. Like in terms of the academic pipeline, it's really interesting from that perspective. But I would say that all to say that growing up, I never would have articulated engineering as a passion of mine, right? Like I have this weird story that I used to collect my mom's old contact lenses and rehydrate them because I did. Like I thought it was so cool that this plastic would like dry out and you could put it in a tub of water and have it be flexible again. Like, but I never thought of that as STEM. I thought it was like, oh, this is a cool, weird thing. Or just tinkering with things, trying to figure out how things work. But I think the real connection for me was as like Girls Who Code and Black Girls Who Code got a little bit more popular when I was ending high school. Our high school took like the opportunity to expand some of our STEM programs. So we did have a robotics engineering design course, and it was taught by one of my favorite physics teachers. And so I got into that, and I really started to understanding like the humanistic components of product design, and it more spoke to me than what I'd seen before. I feel like, especially like 10 years ago, there wasn't a lot of communication, especially to high schoolers, middle schoolers, about what product development means and how like natural it is as a human, but also that connection to STEM. But luckily that was made for me earlier on, so I can understand, oh, I care about people. Like I'm fine in like all academic realms. Like I cared equally about writing that I did to math or engineering or anything, but I wanted to be able to change things to help people. And one of the ways past forward I saw for that was through engineering. So that was kind of the connection to me.
Gotta have or whatever